right, I am so flipping excited to welcome the one and only Heather, aka Keep Speaking Your Truth on TikTok, to the podcast. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me.
I'm so excited. So like straight up, I already like fangirled a little bit, so she's aware, but I follow her on TikTok and I've been following her for quite some time now. And I was just like, okay, I need to like take a deep breath and just send the message. And when she said yes, I literally did like a little like shake in my chair. I was so happy. So I'm just so grateful. But without me getting all gushy, because we all know I'm a talker and we'll sit here for 30 minutes while I gush about how amazing you are. Why don't we dive into your story, who you are, and we'll go from there.
Okay, well, my name is Heather. I am a mother of 4. I'm a nursing student and I'm a narcissistic abuse survivor. I don't know how much the story you want. Do you want the whole thing? Because that would probably take up the whole hour.
Whatever you want to share. The stage is yours.
So I actually knew my abuser. I had met him in 1999. So I knew him for quite some time before. We lost touch, but then we reconnected and we went to go have coffee. My husband was deploying. Well, let's back up a little bit. My husband and I were going to go through a divorce. Things just were stressful. He was in the military. I had gone through 6 deployments with him and I just kind of felt exhausted. And so we decided that we would go ahead and talk about separating and divorcing. But in my state, you have to be separated for a year before you can officially divorce. So he decided, you have to live apart. You have to you can't be intimate. You can't anything. So we decided that he would do a 1-year unaccompanied tour and he would go elsewhere. So the kids and I stayed in North Carolina and he went and deployed. I ran into this old friend. And I think for this podcast purposes, we'll just go ahead and call him Craig. That makes it easier for me not to use his real name. I ran into Craig in Dick's Sporting Goods, of all places. Dick's. Imagine running into a Dick in Dick's. Sorry.
Oh God, I love you so much. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. So ran into him and actually his wife and daughter. And we went ahead and exchanged phone numbers and, talked about meeting up, talked about getting together for 4th of July because it was almost 4th of July. Well, I found out they lived only like 0.2 miles away from me. So that was kind of great. But, we never really ended up meeting up. I had friends that I was doing things with and whatnot. I hate saying,
It's fine. I do it too.
So we ended up meeting up for coffee. And during that coffee, I told him basically everything that was going on with my husband and I. I told him, we were separating. I told him how exhausted I was from all the deployments. I told him, everything. I spilled my guts. And that was probably the worst thing I could have done. Not knowing what I knew then or know now. He exploited it and he sat there and listened and listened and listened. And it was like nothing I had experienced. He, it was nice to be heard. He told me during that coffee that he and his wife were actually going through a separation and she was on her way out to move into her parents' house, which was like up in Raleigh. And that, he was really upset that he wasn't going to be able to spend time with his child and really made it this big story. Told me how, should have been my first red flag, but told me how crazy his wife was, how insane she was. And unfortunately for her, she played really well into the craziness, the crazy making, because while we were having that coffee, she not only called him multiple times, but she called me, she Facebook messaged me, and then she messaged my husband, who was deployed. Yeah. So it really made it look like his story was panning out. Long story short, it was all a lie. Everything he said, everything he did was a lie. He had downloaded fake separation paperwork from the internet, filled in their names, filled in their address. And I had never seen, my husband and I didn't ever go get official papers or anything like that. We just figured, okay, we're just going to live apart and then we'll go file. I didn't know anything with the courts. I had never been in trouble. I had never gone to the courts. I had no clue. So this document to me looked like a legitimate document. Unfortunately, it wasn't. So everything that happened very quickly. After the coffee, he ended up coming over a couple nights, later for beer and sushi. And we ended up just talking all night. And that's when things became more intimate. And it was very, very fast. Things went from 0 to 60. He was talking about, me and my children moving into his home. He was talking about marriage. He was talking about having children with me. So it was, exciting in the beginning because of all these emotions that was running through. But then it quickly turned sour. Within really like 3 weeks, I was pining after him. He would say, I'm going to come over on this day and this time. And then he wouldn't show up. And so I'd message him and I'd be like, what's going on? Where are you? You said you were coming over. And he would not respond. And I was like, what is he doing? Why is he being like this? And so one point I thought, oh my gosh, what if he's hurt? What if he's, so I started Googling and I Googled his name to see if like he had gotten into a car wreck or something, just trying to make my brain make sense of it. And then I found his mugshot. And this was something he had never told me. He had never said that he had been arrested. And so it was very concerning to me to have somebody who was arrested around my children. It was for a DUI and a wreck. So he had wrecked his vehicle while drinking and driving. And the scary thing is that I had let my oldest child go golfing with him. And he drove. And it was just to think that possibly he could have harmed my child that was just running through my head. I confronted him about it. I said, hey, we need to talk. And he was like, what's going on? And I was like, I would rather talk to you about this in person. So the next time you come over, we'll talk. And that just didn't work well for him. He didn't want to talk in person. He wanted to know what I wanted to talk about immediately. He all but demanded it. And I was just blown away at how he was treating me, that, you are the one who got arrested for this. I am just asking you questions about it. Why are you being so defensive? And he's like, well, I had a couple beers after I was golfing, and this guy ran me off the road. And honestly, at the time, it sounded like a legitimate, reason. It just, the way that he was able to tell these stories, it was believable. It was lies mixed with truth. And honestly, it captured me. And I wanted to believe him. Well, fast forward a couple months, and he had to leave. He was also in the military. He had to leave for a training. Well, I kept getting strange messages, text messages, and ended up being from his wife, and she was pretending to be him. She was saying all these weird things, and I was like, how did that, it was just, if they're separating, if they're divorcing, why am I getting messages from her? Why am I getting this? Why am I, it didn't make sense. So I asked him about it, and he's like, no, I told you, she's just crazy. She is just going after you because of X, Y, and Z. And, I hate to say it again, but it just made sense. It was like, okay, I get it. You guys are divorcing, sometimes women can get a little crazy when they're getting divorced, So I believed him. I believed him that she was crazy. I believed him that, nothing was up, but I kept getting red flags. I kept getting weird gut feelings, like something's not right. This is not right. This is not right. He went on this military deployment, and he said that someone mailed him a secondary phone so that his wife couldn't hack into his phone and get all his contacts and get his location because she was tracking him. And it just, okay, you have a second phone now. That's really weird. Who sent you the second phone? Oh, my brother sent it to me, or, okay, that's fine. So it was, I just took it as face value because I was able to talk to him more then. I can, call that other phone. I could text that other phone, and it wasn't being, monitored in his words. And during this trip, he had told his command that his daughter was getting ear tube surgery and that he had to go home for it. And he had told me the same thing. But then I didn't hear from him for a couple of days. And I was like, asking him, how's your daughter? How's the surgery go? Did everything go fine? It's a day procedure. It's in and out usually, but sometimes there can be complications. Mm-hmm. So I just kept trying to find, I'd emailed him, I texted him, I sent him messages. There was no response. And finally he wrote me and he was like, okay, I got to tell you the truth. I told my command that I was going home for my daughter's ear tube surgery, but really I came over and I went to Disney World with my mom and my brother and my sister and my family. And I thought, well, that's what? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. Why would you go to Disney World without your wife, your child? Why would you go, with your mom? And he was a very big Disney World fan. Mm-hmm. I am too. I love Disney World.
Same.
So it just, he said, well, my mom doesn't like, the ex-wife or the soon to be ex-wife. His name for her was Crazy. That's what he called her. That was his nickname for her. So he would say, my mom, my mom doesn't like Crazy. So I went without her. And it just, the way he made me feel better about it was he said, well, I told her about you. I told her, by this time I was already pregnant. So it just, when I tell you went from 0 to 60, it went from 0 to 60. Like I was pregnant within 6 weeks of meeting him. And that's on me. That's, I take full accountability for that, for my own actions, because I thought, okay, well, this will be fine. And I mean, really, it wasn't like we were trying. It wasn't like we weren't trying. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But in retrospect, I wish I could go back and talk to that girl. I really do. But anyways, that's on me. So I was already pregnant, and he said, I told my mom about you. I told my mom about the baby. I told her, everything. And she's so excited to meet you. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm really, that makes me excited. That makes me happy that you've told your mom all about this new relationship. And also it reaffirmed that he was getting divorced because he told his family, he told us, and that was all a lie too. No surprise. But I had asked him, do you think that I could write your mom on Facebook or email or send her a message and kind of introduce myself? That's the kind of person I am. I want to be able to know the people, that I'm going to be associated to by marriage, etc. And he said, yeah, she'd love that. Yeah, go ahead, write her. So I wrote her on Facebook, And I said, hi, my name's Heather. Told me that he told you all about me. I'm really excited to meet you. You know, Greg is really excited about, you know, this relationship, and he really wants you, you know, he really wants us to meet, etc. And Craig's mom wrote back and said, who are you? And I said, what? Why would she say that? You know, he told me that he told her. What is going on? And so I wrote back and I said, well, you know, he told me that, you know, he told you all about me, all about everything. And she wrote back and she said, don't you know that he's married and he has a child? Where is your integrity? And I wrote her back and I said, he told me he's getting divorced. I'm getting divorced. I was so confused. When I tell you I was confused, I was so beyond confused. I didn't understand why he would lie to me about telling his parents, telling his family that, you know, we were in a relationship, we were having a child, we were, you know, that doesn't make sense. So that's really when I started to realize that something was not right. That was my biggest stop sign. And when I asked him about why she said that, his reply to me was that she's old and she forgets things. And at this time, it's not like his mother was old. His mother was 52. 52. So I was like, okay. But then I started keeping the messages. Then I started like trying to go back and reread things and see if I could see anything through the cracks, you know, try and evaluate where did I go wrong? Where did I miss this red flag? And I kept looking and looking and looking and realized I just missed a whole bunch. Well, by this time it was Halloween, and my best friend, who knew about everything that was going on, she was just telling me, you know, you guys, you got to get out of this. You got to get out of this. And I wasn't listening to her. I was like so in love with him. I thought that, you know, I mean, I was pregnant with his child, and I was like, no, he can't be doing this. And one night, during all of this, he had stayed over, and the next morning his wife was on my front porch. And I was like, why are you here? Why are you knocking on the door? And she was like, you know, it's my child's birthday tomorrow and he's supposed to come and help. And again, reiterated the fact that she truly was, quote unquote, crazy. My friend said, you need to start looking at this from a different perspective. You need to start looking at this, that maybe he's actually just lying to his wife and you are actually in a relationship with a man who has no intentions of getting divorced. So as it so happens, he was in the military, and one of the guys who was in his unit actually lived in my neighborhood. The wife of the guy was friends with the wife of Craig. So eventually it got to her that he was spending the night, that he was over at my house in the mornings and the evenings and the afternoons. And what I found out was happening was he was telling her that he had duty and he would come over to my house. So he, you know, I have this, or I have that, or I have this exercise, and he would come over to my house. So during all of this, I found out that I found him on multiple dating sites. And there was a particular dating site where you could have friends on it. And it was actually more of an adult-based site. It really wasn't even a dating site. It was more for people who had kinks and fetishes. And he was on that page, liking all sorts of women's pictures, commenting on their pictures, telling them he would get them pregnant, telling them that he wanted to have children with them, because there's you know, a fetish of impregnation. So He was all up in those women's pictures, and everything's public. So you could see it as long as you joined the website, and it's a free website, you could see what they comment on. So I found his thing, and I confronted him about it. And I said, well, what about all these women that you've told all this stuff to? Oh, that's just, that's just me being funny. And that's me being, and he brushed it off. And I was like, no. So, it eventually got to the point where the woman in the neighborhood told the wife, and the wife actually came back over and confronted me. And because all the previous dealings that I had with her, they were not good experiences, I did not want to talk to her. She was, in my mind, the enemy. And he did a really good job of triangulating us against each other. He would tell her one thing about me. Oh no, she's just a swinger, and she's cheating on her husband, and she's sleeping with all sorts of guys. And that's what he told her. And then this finally got back to me, that he was telling all these lies about me, because, she finally just broke down and told me, this is what he's saying about you. This is, etc. Well, the way she reached out was, again, she reached out through my husband, who was deployed. And he didn't need this stress. He didn't need this stuff while he was overseas. And he said, what's going on? He knew I had been seeing people, he knew I had been seeing someone, but he didn't, know who. I didn't, I wasn't going to share that stuff with my soon-to-be ex-husband. You know what I mean? It just wasn't right. So he's like, why is this lady reaching out to me? Why is she messaging me? What is going on? And so I kind of just broke down. I told him everything that had happened, and he was disappointed, because I hadn't waited for us to get divorced. He was, still in the hopes that we could work things out. And it just pained me, because here he is in another country, and this lady keeps reaching out to him. he's not a part of this. Leave him alone. And so I finally reached out to her, and I was like, what do you want to know? What do you want to know? And she was like, are you pregnant with his baby? And I said, yes. And I told her everything, and I showed her all the screenshots of everything, and to include all the women that he had been talking to. And at that point, I had reached out to multiple women who were mutual friends on this page. And I had told them, hey, this is what's going on. I'm pregnant. He's telling me that you guys aren't anything, blah, 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 blah. And that's how I came to find that there were 15 other women that he was in a fake relationship with, essentially. And he was telling them all the same things. I swear, if I could copy and paste the messages, that's what he was doing. He was putting stuff in his notes and pasting it to every woman. Good morning, babe. I love you. You're my soulmate. I can't wait to have this relationship with you. We're going to make such beautiful babies. The whole thing. So I sent everything to the wife. At that point, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm being lied to. She's being lied to. So I want to tell her the truth. I want to do the right thing. And unfortunately for her, she didn't believe me. She, everything he told her about me was that I was crazy, that I was stalking him, that I was making up fake dating profiles, that I was talking to these women, that it was me, that I was sending pictures to women. I was pretending to be him, essentially. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not the one going and having relations and intercourse with other women. That doesn't make any sense. Unfortunately, he had gaslit her to the point where she just was so confused about what to believe. And I didn't feel it then. I feel it now, but I truly feel sorry for her that she had to go through it. She was married to him for 7 years. She was in that hell for that long, plus dating, plus, you know. But I had found out after the fact that he had lied to me about how many marriages he had, about how many children he had. And it wasn't until, you know, years later that I found out that what I thought was his second wife was really his fifth wife, and that he had 4 daughters before my daughter. So it was something that completely blew my mind. Eventually I went ahead, and because neither of them would leave me alone, I ended up having to file a no contact order through the courts. And then and funny thing is I didn't have to file the no contact order against him. I ended up having to file the no contact order against her, because she was creating fake Facebook profiles. She was, well, what he told me, it was her creating fake Facebook profiles. But, you know, at this point, who knows? Really, who knows? And just, I would get messages out of the blue. I would get random, just weird things, you know, things that I couldn't explain. My fire alarm went off one night. And the funny thing is my fuse box in this house that I was renting was on the outside of the house. So all you would have to do is go, and my fire alarm would go off. And he knew this. He knew where everything was in my home. He knew which room was which room. He knew, you know, my son's room, my daughter's room, what was the playroom, what was the garage, what was the living room, the kitchen, etc. He had been in my home multiple times. The wife had never been in my home. So the night that I had this no contact order served, I got a text message that said, "You don't deserve to live. Your children don't deserve to live. Enjoy your night. Your gun is not going to save you. Your light in your playroom is on, etc. Your son's room light is on." He said every single light to every single corresponding room, and said a whole bunch of horrible, vile things. And I called, instead of replying, I just called the sheriff, and the sheriff was there, and the messages were still coming in. And the last message was, "That's right, be scared." So he knew that I had called the police. He knew that the police had come to my home. And I still get anxious about it now, thinking about how the fact that he could have done something. He could have killed me and my children, and that would have been that. So it took the police 3 days to arrest him. And those 3 days I didn't sleep. I sat on my couch with a shotgun, waiting for him to basically come through the door. I was pregnant. I was extremely nauseous, and all the stress was making me not eat. I was throwing up. I was on the toilet. It was horrific. I mean, I was to the point where I was probably going to lose the pregnancy because it was just so bad. I kept going to the ER. I bought a home Doppler because I was so worried that all this stress was going to kill my daughter. So thankfully they had arrested him. And because he was still out on bond from the previous arrest, because they hadn't fully gone through and charged him or found him guilty or whatever of the DUI, he was held overnight. He was held without bond. So he had to wait till the next morning to go to a bond hearing. And funny enough, the morning that I had to go to court for the no contact order against the wife was the morning he had the bond hearing. So the wife stands up in court and basically yells at the judge and says, I have to be in another courtroom because my husband has a bond hearing. Like, she could not be bothered to be in the hearing for mine. And I ended up getting a no contact protective order against him as well. So neither of them were supposed to contact me, but they did. But they did it in a way that they would use fake apps, fake Facebook accounts, fake, and they would just send messages where I knew it was them, but you can't prove it. So it was very insidious and very it was a nightmare. So I had enough, and I went and I turned him into his command. I told his command everything. I told him, because in the military, adultery is a crime. So I gave them all the messages from the 15 women that I found. I told them, I'm pregnant with his child. This is what he told me. And I filed a whole complaint. And looking back on that, that was probably the worst thing I could have done, because it made the abuse, it just ignited a fire that I could not put out. In the end, I'm glad I did it, but it made it worse. It made the text messages ramp up, and it made the stalking worse. So after all this happened, I went on, I ended up having my daughter, and my husband came home from his deployment. And, this is actually something that I don't talk about a lot, because I've been asked not to, but I think it's important to know, to tell people my whole story, to tell people the whole truth of everything, because, Keep Speaking Your Truth is about that. But so my husband came home, and he said, I think that we can work through this. I think that we can get through this. I think that I can still love her. I can love this little girl with all my heart. I can be her dad. And
oh man, like that's got me going, oh.
Yeah, that's probably why I don't talk about it too, because it's so intimate, and it's so personal, and it's so oh my gosh. So anyways, I said, okay, let's try to get through this, and let's try to work through it, and let's, but we need to go to therapy. I need therapy. I need us to go to therapy, and I need us to work through it. And so we did that. We worked on us individually, and we worked on our marriage, and we are still married. So
Oh no. For those on the podcast, you can't see me using it, but I'm over here just like trying to save my makeup.
Look, I'm like turning completely flush right now, because I'm trying not to cry. But yeah, so it's not something that is talked about a lot, that I don't talk about a lot, because it's just, that is such an intimate and personal point in my life. And I've actually still not completely processed that even after everything, this man stood up, and he is her dad. He's her everything, and she is his everything. And he does not treat her any different than our other children. And he does not, I get lost for words when it comes to that, because there are not many men who would do that. And there are not many men who would say, okay, my wife and I went through this, and I am a better person. I am a better person because of it. And we are a better couple because of it. We are a better family because of it. Because of everything we went through, all the struggles, we went through it. So he came back, and we actually left the state of North Carolina, and we moved to Italy. So we lived in Italy for 2 years, and it was great because I got away from him. unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know. You know, I wish I could go back and do so many things differently, but it has definitely made me see who I am. It has made me see things from a different perspective. So before I left to Italy, we were in the grocery store, me and my girlfriend and my daughter. We ran into Craig and his wife grocery shopping. It's funny because I don't really believe in coincidences anymore. I think that things are supposed to happen how they happen. And with a narcissist, I feel like a lot of the times it is planned. Like they're going to go to the places they know you go to. So for example, they had a grocery store that was closer to their home and they never went to it. They instead came all the way over to where I lived and went to the grocery store that was nearest to me. They said because the vegetables and fruit were better. But anyways, we ran into them, and so they went this way in the store. So me and my girlfriend went this way. And it ended up that, you know, the grocery store is basically, you're going to come around and you're going to walk by them. I decided to get frisky because they had been trying to get pictures of my daughter and see who they were, because, you know, he was obviously denying that it was his. He, you know, because I was sleeping around with everyone else, the baby wasn't his. And we had, quote unquote, to him, only slept together once. Which was, yeah, you know, that's his truth. And that's, you know, that's what he's going to tell people. But I can only tell people from my version, you know? So anyways, it was a bad experience because I walked right up behind them in the grocery line, and I basically, you know, I had the car seat stroller combo open so that he could see that my daughter looked just like him, you know, and she could see that the man who supposedly I slept with, who the baby was his, was a Puerto Rican guy. And you could see plainly as day that this baby was very, 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 you know, not Puerto Rican. And so I walked up behind them and she was like, she just threw a fit. And the grocery store, the cashier was just like looking at her like, what is this? Why is this lady flipping out? And that morning I had found out that one of the other women that I had talked to prior had ended up getting pregnant too. And Craig had went ahead and forced her to get an abortion. And this was a man who was very conservative and very, just fake religious. He was like, oh, I don't believe in abortions. I don't, you know, all this stuff. Well, it was all just a lie. Everything he did was a lie. Everything he said was a lie. And it was definitely not, he's definitely not who he was, you know, he pretended to be. So anyways, I had said something to the fact of, well, why don't you ask your husband about the other girl who is pregnant, basically. And that was not a good thing. I made things worse, and they called the police after they left the grocery store and said that I hit them with my daughter's stroller. My daughter was like 6 weeks old at the time. There's no way that I would run into somebody's ankle with a stroller with a baby in it. Do you know what I mean? Intentionally or unintentionally.
And plus there's cameras, like it's a grocery store. Anyway, sorry, continue.
Yeah, no. So they called the police, and the police went to the grocery store, and the grocery store cameras did not show any of that. So the sheriff's deputy told me, well, I'm not going to arrest you because there's no evidence. But in my state, a person can go in front of a magistrate and say, and swear under oath that something happened, and they can file charges that way. And once they do that, if the magistrate agrees with their character, they'll issue a warrant for arrest. So that happened. She went to the magistrate and filed charges against me for stalking and simple assault. So the sheriff's deputy came back to my house the next night at like 10:30 at night. And here I am with 4 children and a husband that was deployed. And he's trying to arrest me. And I'm like, this is not happening. I can't, I'm breastfeeding this baby. I can't just, I have no one here. No one lives within the vicinity of me. My nearest friend was 45 minutes away. My other friend, who was like my neighbor, she was out of town. She was in Raleigh. So it was horrific. It was horrific. And I thankfully it was the same deputy who saw nothing happen. So he said, I apologize that you're having to go through this. I will let you just come down on your own recognizance, but you have to come down tonight. So my friend drove all the way 45 minutes away and came and took us to the sheriff's office. And I went through the whole process of like getting fingerprints, getting a mugshot taken, everything. And eventually everything was dropped. And then I had to pay more money to get it all expunged. And it was just such a nightmare. So because I was in the mind frame of revenge and being petty, I went ahead and said, okay, well, you guys want to go ahead and file these made up stuff against me? You can play at this game. So I went to my county child support office and filed for child support. And the child support office said, okay, well, I explained the whole situation to them, and they said, okay, well, you have to do a DNA test. And I was like, okay, let's go. Let's go. So that was a long process because he avoided that for 6 months. There was an excuse for everything. And in that time, that child support's adding up because they assume that he is the father. My husband had to sign like an affidavit saying, I was not here, I was gone, etc. Blah, blah, blah. And he actually had to do a DNA test as well to say, this is not my baby. Finally, so I filed for that in July, and then finally in February of the next year, the courts finally ordered him to go ahead and start paying child support. And, there are days where I wish I could just have gone back and just not done it at all. Because it just led to 4 or 5 more years of trauma and pain and horrible things being said and my life being threatened again. He told one of the girls that was still his supply. He told her, I just wish that he said our family name, I just wish they would all die. I wish they would get into a horrific accident and just all die. So that was great. Eventually we ended up moving back to the same area because my husband is military and, this is a military base. He retired, thankfully, and we were able to he was able to find a really, really awesome job here, and we ended up staying. But they finally moved away because the ex-wife was still married to him for several more years. And then in the summer of 2019, she reached out to me and she said, I've had enough. I've had enough. I need your help. And my first thought was, go to hell. Go to hell. I'm not helping you. You tried to have me arrested. You have stalked me. You have harassed me. You have said multiple negative things about me. go to hell. You deserve everything you got. You put up with it. But something in me shifted and I said, I need to help her because no one helped me and no one stood up for me and no one would help me fight him. Not one person of those 15 women that I found would help me, would go to the military, would make a statement. They all sided with him. They all told his story, you know, his lie. They all told it. And it was beyond the most frustrating thing that I had ever dealt with. But I knew I had to help her. So I said, okay, what do you want me to do? And she said, he choked me. He slammed me on the table. He broke my table and he did this all in front of my children and I can't do this anymore. And so I went up and I met her at the courthouse and I helped her file. He had been arrested. So I helped her file for, you know, a DVPO, domestic violence protective order. I gave her all sorts of resources that I had, you know, used and I had helped find. And she went and hired a lawyer and I helped the lawyer. I gave the lawyer everything that I had from my cases, from my stuff. All the conversations I had with the women I had, still had them. I still have them on my external hard drive, just in case, you know, it's ever needed. She finally was granted a divorce in, well, she was granted the divorce from bed and board, meaning he had to leave. He could not stay at that house anymore. And she took him back in the fall because he threatened to unalive himself. And he had driven in, or he was walking in traffic and stuff like that. And she felt really responsible for basically his downfall, even though it wasn't her fault. So because she took him back, I could not talk to her anymore. I could not, that was, you know, I'm sorry that happened, but I cannot help you. So I stopped talking to her for a good year. I didn't talk to her. I didn't talk to her for most of 2019 and about half of 2020. And then in 2020, she said, no, he's gone now officially for real this time. Our divorce is going to be official in July and I could really use your help because he's not paying me child support. He's not fulfilling his obligations. And now he's moved in with this other lady. And I thought, okay, let me help her again. Because I know what it's like again, to be there without anybody to help. And it just ended up being another really bad decision because the lady that he ended up getting with, who he's currently with now, I believe to be a narcissist as well. Let me back up. I know, told her that who I was and that I would probably try to reach out to her and I would probably try to warn her and I would probably, you know, so she preemptively blocked me. But I knew she had a child and this man has had multiple arrests. He threatened to kill his wife and daughter. He pointed a shotgun at them. He left his children alone in the house while he went to go get beer. He would pass out drunk and leave the oven on and stuff on the oven or, you know, the stovetop. He is not a safe person to be around his own children, as deemed by the courts. So it's not just a, you know, my opinion thing. He is not a safe person to be around his children as deemed by the courts. So I reached out to the new supplies ex-husband and I told him, you need to be careful with your child. And because I reached out to him, this new supply went and filed a relief for stalking petition in her state. We were in different states. And because it was COVID, and because she had used messages that the ex-wife had sent and another girl had sent, she used those messages and said that I sent them and that she was fearful for her life. And the courts believed her. The courts took her for her word, and they granted her a relief from stalking petition. I've never once spoken to this woman. I've never reached out to her. I've never, it was insane to me. So of course I had to hire a lawyer because I was in a completely different, they're in Florida and I'm in North Carolina. So I had to hire a lawyer there and fight all this stuff for nothing. And it was exhausting. I was in nursing school. We were in the middle of a pandemic. I was doing nursing school basically from home and having to worry about this other person. And it was just I was like, I am reliving this nightmare. So it was then that we had been talking about it for years. My husband and I had been talking about it for years, but we went ahead and got the paperwork started so that my husband could do the step parent adoption. And to do the step parent adoption, Craig would either have to sign his rights away or we would have to go fight in court. I knew that he was sick and tired of paying child support. So I had that as a leverage. I had the money as a leverage. And one thing I can tell you is that narcissists treasure their money. They hold it very near and dear to their heart. And it's the one thing that, especially if they're like Craig is, the money is the only one thing that can hurt him. So I started the thing. We have to do a federal background and a state background, and it was COVID. And that was the longest process because no one was working. Everyone was working from home. No federal buildings were open. It was a nightmare. Well, then Craig had come back up to the state of North Carolina to finish up finalize his divorce and celebrate his son's birthday. During this time, there was still a DVPO in effect, and the ex-wife had let him come to the birthday party and let him be around her. But he had come to her home drunk one night and basically broke down the door, went right into the house and was saying all sorts of things. This is on like a Ring video. And he was then arrested for felony DVPO violation, felony. Yeah, he violated the DVPO. And he had done it so many times that it became a felony. He had broken his DVPO, I think, 4 times in the previous year. So then this time it was a felony. And then he also was charged with felony burglary and resisting arrest because he ran from the police and was tased in the butt.
Delivery. Y'all need to watch this on YouTube for that clip alone. So happy.
Anyways, he was tased. And then he was subsequently arrested. So actually it was a year ago yesterday, I had drove up to the courts so that I could see if I could just go ahead and get him to sign his rights away. It would have been an easier process for us, and he would have had 7 days to change his mind, and then it would have taken the courts 90 days to finalize it. And then we would be done with him. It had been such an easier process. So I went into the courts, and again, this is during, height of COVID in the middle of July, and sitting there with my mask on, and the courts were telling me we don't have a notary because, it was essential only. And I'm thinking, well, this is a courthouse. How do you not have a notary? But they didn't have a notary, and thankfully his lawyer, who was representing him for this DVPO violation, said she had a notary and she would be able to be willing to help me. I was shocked and elated at the same time. But I waited there all day, and in the end, she told me that he signed it and that she was going to take it back to her office and have it notarized. So the notary didn't see him sign it, which, you know, would have caused problems in our case later on, which I didn't know at the time, but I just figured she's a lawyer. She's, you know, going to follow the law. Well, she called, I got this thing signed, and I got all the way back home, and she called me and she said, I'm so sorry, but the notary is not comfortable doing this, and neither am I. I'm not a family law attorney, so I cannot advise him of his legal rights for signing his rights away of his child. So everything that he signed is null and void. And I know she said that she wasn't comfortable with it, but there's a part of me that believes that he just went ahead and signed it and then told her he changed his mind. Because, you know, why not inflict more pain? It just, I don't know. So anyways, it took because he had signed it and then changed his mind, we had to then go back and redo the federal background check and redo the state background check and go back through this whole entire process. And it took another 6 months. We finally got the paperwork finalized in December of 2020. And in December of 2021, my husband became our daughter's legal father. So there's a lot of stuff that is left out because time, and that I feel like I've been talking forever. I apologize, but basically that's from the beginning to where we are now. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, don't even apologize. Like, not even like a disrespect to like take away from it, but it was such a riveting story. Like, I was just paying. And side note, unrelated, I'm not going to rant too much. I know we're running out of time, but as someone who, the man I call my dad is not my sperm donor. And I am so grateful for that every day. And so when I hear, it just, hit me in my soul. So I'm so happy for your family. I'm so happy for your daughter. Like that, we still haven't done the step parent adoption. And a lot of people have told me, you're 28, it's not important. Yes, it is important. We are working on it and getting it done because that's very important. And well, and also thank you so much for being so honest and open and sharing all of that, though, because that is the thing that's not done enough. And the reason that there is so much stigma is because we as survivors have been told to sit down and shut up, and it's our fault. And until not that it should be our responsibility, but it's unfortunately our responsibility as survivors to speak up and to give those, to let people know that there is a voice. And that they do have a voice and that their voice does matter. And these stories do matter because I know I related to so much of your story. I know that there's someone listening who's relating so much to it. And just seeing where you are now is going to give so much hope. So thank you for all that you do. And just that, I'm going to be a mess going back through listening to it again because now I'm on camera. So I'm like trying to not lose it. I'm going to lose it when I edit this, man. Ugh.
Well, there's also such a stigma, and I really for years wasn't able to talk and tell my full story because I essentially feel like I was the other woman. And there's a huge stigma with the other woman and cheating spouses, and it's a hard story to tell because I didn't cheat on my husband. We were separated. We were not planning on getting back together. I didn't know that he was lying. And I really feel like a lot of times we as women, we go and attack the other woman because we think, oh, girl code, you don't need to be messing with my man. But sometimes we don't sit and think that that man could be lying, or that woman, you know, your partner could be lying to that other person, just like he did to me. And put me in a situation now where I have become this other woman. And I think that that's so important to say that, you know, stop blaming other women, stop blaming other men. Your partner is the one who said vows to you. Your partner is the one who agreed to love you, to, you know, love and cherish for better, for worse. You know, your partner is the one who said that. And if they're lying to you, they're lying to her. We're not any different. So I think that's true too, why I wanted to make sure that it gets out there and not misrepresent myself, because that's not something I ever want to do.
And that is something so important. And I've never understood that. Like, I remember being a teenager and all of that garbage that we watched, like when we were teenagers, right? And everyone always got mad at the other woman or the other girl. And it's just like, but why are we mad at her when he's the one who's playing? Like, I've never understood that. And I think it is that's so telling of how pervasive and how manipulative all of this has gotten, and how women are viewed and how relationships are viewed, and this hierarchy. Like, it's stories like this are so powerful for a variety of reasons. And they're not to downplay the fact that you are such a badass and you're recovering from all the abuse, but there's so many nuances that need to be talked about. Like the fact that when there are children involved, all of this stuff comes up. When the fact of like that you are being manipulated and there's all these other women, and this woman chose to stay and then go back and then leave and then stay. There's so much there that the more we talk about it, as uncomfortable as it is, and I preface it with this always, no one is obligated to my story. No one is obligated to your story. Nobody is required to share what we share. But I truly believe that if we feel pulled to share it, that we should, because it gives a voice. Because there's someone who is going through a similar situation that feels like they can't speak up, that they shouldn't speak up. And they're blaming themselves because they were, quote unquote, the other woman, or they did stay, or they did go back. All of this stuff. And something I'm really big on is educating, like learning about trauma psychology and how this changes your brain, to get people to understand on the neurological level why this stuff is so hard, and why get over it or just be done with it is not an option. But stuff like this too, and realizing that there are humans involved and not just a name on social media, is so powerful. Because when we can put names to survivors, and we can put like their stories behind it, eventually, I have to believe that eventually we're going to scream loud enough that there's going to be change. There needs to be change in the judicial system. There needs to be change in education. There needs to be change in schools. There needs to be change in how we glorify abuse in romantic movies. And you can't watch a movie with me anymore. No one, everyone hates it. I watch them by myself now, because like,
or even these couples on TikTok who pretend to hit someone or pretend to do this violent stuff. Why are we giving them millions of likes? Why are we following people who are like this? Why are we glorifying it?
I don't understand why people think it's funny. And then they get mad at survivors for speaking up. But it's also like, this is the reason why when someone comes forward, they're not taken seriously, because rape is a joke, because domestic violence is a joke, because, it's so funny. And then there's this whole other stigma that's brought on by the same system about when men are the victim. Like, there's so much garbage. And side note, I've been saying this so much lately, but I'm like happy to get it out there. The same men who want to comment on women's survivor stories going, well, it happens to men too, are the same men who are going to mock the male victims and say that you weren't man enough and you shouldn't have let it happen. And I can't believe you let a woman hit you. And it's just like, my best friend is a survivor, and he's a man. And he is a black man, and his wife was white. So he was like, there's literally nothing I could have done. And yet everyone who's telling him that it happens to men to speak up were the same ones that were mocking him. Like, not to like, hey, I'll put my soapbox back up on the wall. But there's just so much power to sharing the stories and getting this out there, because There's so much. There's so much.
I feel like it is a topic that is not spoken about enough. And I am so glad there are so many men on TikTok who are sharing their truth, who are advocating for other men. They're phenomenal that they are coming forward with their stories, because it takes a lot. It takes a lot for a man to say, my wife abused me and I wasn't able to leave, because it's not that simple. You can't just say, just leave. Some of these people can't. They're financially dependent. They're emotionally addicted. They can't just leave. You can't just leave. It's a process. Even me getting back with my husband and still being addicted to this other man, and still wanting him to try to have a relationship with his daughter, but yet fostering this relationship with my husband and the daughter. You know, it's a mind. It's your mind is incredible. And, you know, there's only so many things that you can do before it just stops. So I think blaming these victims, telling people to leave, that is not helpful, but encouraging them that they can get through one day at a time, 1 minute at a time. That's what I do. I try to encourage them, you know, no contact, get through 1 day, get through 2 days, 3 days, you know, make it a month, make it a year, 3 years, 5 years. You're not going to be the same person on day 1 of no contact as you are on year 1.
Yes, that unfortunately, I can't speak too much on the situation right now, just due to stuff. But I will say that even though when you are unable to go completely no contact due to children, there are still ways. It's not easy, but there are still ways. And once you set those boundaries, it's going to be really messy at first, but if you just stand strong, it is so friggin' so worth it. So dang worth it. Really quick, I know we got to wrap it up here, but I would just love to know, for the woman who just got out, maybe they just got out last week, last month, and they are struggling with what to do next, what would you say to them?
I would say reach out to the friends that you were lost along the way, because we know that you've been isolated. Reach out to the friends that you lost and tell them what's been going on. Tell them your truth and tell them it's not that I didn't want to be friends with you. It's just that I had so much. I need a friend. I need you. I need you to be in my life, and find the resources. Find that person that's going to stand with you, that is going to sit by you in court, that is going to stand up for you, because it is so incredibly hard to do alone. You can do it. I did it alone, you know, with the support of my kids and my husband, but I had to go to court alone. I had to, you know, I had to face him alone. And it just, find that other person to help you.
That right there, like, and I say it all the time, and it's with all of the research I've done. I feel like it shouldn't surprise me anymore, but it's just so crazy how we can go through this and we're like, oh no, we know you've been isolated. I don't know you. Like, I don't know you personally. I'm not sitting right in front of you, but I know that that's a thing, because that's how they get you. The moment that they can pull you up. Well, okay. One of my favorite things that Heather's got going on right now, I am shaking my camera. So sorry to everybody who gets motion sickness. One of the things that Heather's doing right now on TikTok that I love is the no contact check-in. And that, I think, is so powerful. So if you don't have a TikTok, get a TikTok specifically for Heather. I will warn you, you will get addicted. I'm sorry. It's just a thing, but go and do that check-in. It's so beneficial. It's so powerful. I don't care if you've been out 1 year or 10 years. If it's a struggle for you, do it. There's no shame. There's never any shame. There's no judgment, all love. But with that being said, now that I'm getting ahead of myself, where can people reach out to you? Where can they talk to you, learn more about you, and follow you for all of your amazing Heatherness?
Heatherness. I love it. So I'm on TikTok as Keep Speaking Your Truth. I don't have like an Instagram or a Facebook page. think that TikTok is really where more people are at right now. You can also reach out to www.narctalk.com. That's NARCTOK.com. And we have resources there. There's a multitude of creators who came together to create this website for us.
I didn't even know. I'm going to have to go and like check that out now. That is so cool. All of those links are going to be in the show notes, the show description. If you're watching on YouTube, don't hesitate to reach out. I feel like, especially me, I'm one of those people that go, oh, they're so cool, but I don't want to bother them. Bother her. She's here for you. Literally, seriously, it lights her up. Do it. I'm looking.
My inbox is open. Even if you're not following me, maybe you can't follow me because your spouse watches who you follow. My inbox is open to everyone. I have it open to receive messages from anyone who is not my friend, who is my friend, who is following me, who is not following me.
People like you, let me tell you, all I can say is this, is that there is no flipping way that there are badass, powerful women like me, like you, like so many of the amazing people just on TikTok alone. There's no way that change ain't happening, because we're sick and tired of it. And the louder we get, the less they're going to be able to ignore us. So thank you so much for your time today, Heather. I am so grateful that I had the balls to say, okay, we need to do this. This was so good. I'm going to have you back because there's still so much.
Anytime. I would love to do a Q&A with you or your followers or your podcast. Just let me know. Okay.
Oh, she said it. I can go back and screen record. It's happening. I am so stoked. Thank you so much, Heather.
You're so welcome.